Chapter 12. Now these are the priests and the Levites, who went up with Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua: Sariah, Jeremiah, Ezra, Amariah, Malach, Hattush, Shechaniah, Rehum, Meremoth, Iddo, Ginnathoi, Abijah, Mizamim, Madiah, Bilkah, Shemaiah, and Joarib, Jediah, Salu, Amok, Hilkiah, and Jediah. These were the chiefs of the priests and of their brothers in the days of Jeshua. Moreover the Levites: Jeshua, Benui, Kadmiel, Sherebiah, Judah, and Mattaniah, who was over the thanksgiving, he and his brothers. Also Bakbukiah and Uno and their brothers were over against them according to their offices. Jeshua became the father of Joiakim, and Joiakim became the father of Eliashib, and Eliashib became the father of Joiada, and Joiada became the father of Jonathan, and Jonathan became the father of Jaddua. In the days of Joiakim were priests, heads of fathers' houses: of Sariah, Moriah; of Jeremiah, Hananiah; of Ezra, Meshullam; of Amariah, Jehohanan; of Malachi, Jonathan; of Shebaniah, Joseph; of Haram, Adnah; of Marioth, Hilkai; of Iddo, Zechariah; of Ginnathon, Meshullam; of Abijah, Zichri; of Meniamim, Piltai; of Bilgah, Shammua; of Shemaiah, Jehonathan; of Joarib, Mattaniah; of Jediah, Uzai; of Salai, Kalai; of Amok, Eber; of Hilkiah, Hashabiah; of Jedediah, Nethanel. As for the Levites, in the days of Eliashib, Joiada, and Johanan, and Jaddua, there were recorded the heads of the fathers' houses, also the priests, in the reign of Darius the Persian. The sons of Levi, heads of fathers' houses, were written in the book of the Chronicles, even until the days of Johanan the son of Eliashib. The chiefs of the Levites: Hashabiah, Sherebiah, and Jeshua the son of Kadmiel, with their brothers over against them, to praise and give thanks, section next to section, according to the commandment of David the man of God. Mattaniah, and Bakbukiah, Obadiah, Meshullam, Talmon, and Akkub were porters keeping the watch at the storehouses of the gates. These were in the days of Joiakim the son of Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, and in the days of Nehemiah the governor, and of Ezra the priest and scribe. At the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, they sought out the Levites out of all their places, to bring them to Jerusalem, to keep the dedication with gladness, both with giving thanks and with singing, with cymbals, psalteries, and with harps. The sons of the singers gathered themselves together, both out of the plain round about Jerusalem, and from the villages of the Netophilites, also from Beth Gilgal, and out of the fields of Geba and Asmaveth, for the singers had built themselves villages round about Jerusalem. The priests and the Levites purified themselves, and they purified the people, and the gates, and the wall. Then I brought up the princes of Judah on the wall, and appointed 2 great companies who gave thanks and went in procession. One went on the right hand on the wall toward the dung gate, and after them went Hoshea and half of the princes of Judah, and Azariah, Ezra, and Meshullam, Judah and Benjamin, and Shemaiah and Jeremiah, and certain of the priest's sons with trumpets: Zechariah the son of Jonathan, the son of Shemaiah, the son of Mattaniah, the son of Micaiah, the son of Zachor, the son of Asaph, and his brothers Shemaiah, and Azarel, Malalai, Galalai, Mai, Nethanel, and Judah; Hanani, with the musical instruments of David the man of God, and Ezra the scribe was before them. By the spring gate, and straight before them they went up by the stairs of the city of David, at the ascent of the wall above the house of David, even to the water gate eastward. The other company of those who gave thanks went to meet them, and I after them, with the half of the people on the wall above the tower of the furnaces, even to the broad wall, and above the gate of Ephraim, and by the old gate, and by the fish gate, and by the tower of Hananel, and the tower of Hameah, even to the sheep gate, and they stood still in the gate of the guard. So stood the 2 companies of those who gave thanks in the house of God, and I, and the half of the rulers with me, and the priest, Eliakim, Maaseiah, Meniamim, Micaiah, Elioenai, Zechariah, and Hananiah with trumpets, and Maaseiah, and Shimei, and Eleazar, and Uzai, and Jehohanan, and Malchijah, and Elam, and Ezer. The singers sang loud, with Jezreiah their overseer. They offered great sacrifices that day, and rejoiced, for God had made them rejoice with great joy, and the women also and the children rejoiced, so that the joy of Jerusalem was heard even afar off. On that day were men appointed over the chambers for the treasures, for the heave offerings, for the firstfruits, and for the tithes, to gather them, according to the fields of the cities, the portions appointed by the law for the priests and Levites. For Judah rejoiced for the priests and for the Levites who served. They kept the charge of their God, and the charge of the purification, and so did the singers and the porters, according to the commandment of David, and of Solomon his son. For in the days of David and Asaph of old there was a chief of the singers, and songs of praise and thanksgiving to God. All Israel in the days of Zerubbabel and in the days of Nehemiah gave the portions of the singers and the porters, as every day required, and they set apart that which was for the Levites, and the Levites set apart that which was for the sons of Aaron. Chapter 13. On that day they read in the book of Moses, in the audience of the people, and therein was found written, that an Ammonite and a Moabite should not enter into the assembly of God forever, because they did meet the children of Israel with bread and with water, but hired Balaam against them, to curse them. However our God turned the curse into a blessing. It came to pass, when they had heard the law, that they separated from Israel all the mixed multitude. Now before this, Eliashib the priest, who was appointed over the chambers of the house of our God, being allied to Tobiah, had prepared for him a great chamber, where before they laid the meal offerings, the frankincense, and the vessels, and the tithes of the grain, the new wine, and the oil, which were given by commandment to the Levites, and the singers, and the porters, and the heave offerings for the priest. But in all this time I was not at Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes king of Babylon I went to the king, and after certain days I asked leave of the king, and I came to Jerusalem, and understood the evil that Eliashib had done for Tobiah, in preparing him a chamber in the courts of the house of God. It grieved me badly, therefore I cast forth all the household stuff of Tobiah out of the chamber. Then I commanded, and they cleansed the chambers, and there were brought again the vessels of the house of God, with the meal offerings and the frankincense. I perceived that the portions of the Levites had not been given to them, so that the Levites and the singers who did the work were fled every one to his field. Then I contended with the rulers and said, Why is the house of God forsaken? I gathered them together and set them in their place. Then Judah brought the tithe of grain, and the new wine, and the oil to the treasuries. I made treasurers over the treasuries, Shelemiah the priest, and Zadok the scribe, and of the Levites Pedaiah, and next to them was Hanan the son of Zaccur, the son of Mattaniah, for they were counted faithful, and their business was to distribute to their brothers. Remember me, my God, concerning this, and don't wipe out my good deeds that I have done for the house of my God, and for the observances of it. In those days I saw in Judah some men treading winepresses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves, and loading donkeys with wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I testified against them in the day in which they sold food. There lived men of Tyre also there, who brought in fish and all manner of wares, and sold on the Sabbath to the children of Judah and in Jerusalem. Then I contended with the nobles of Judah, and said to them, What evil thing is this that you do, and profane the Sabbath day? Didn't your fathers do this? And did not our God bring all this evil on us and on this city? Yet you bring more wrath on Israel by profaning the Sabbath. It came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the doors should be shut, and commanded that they should not be opened until after the Sabbath. And some of my servants I set over the gates, that there should no burden be brought in on the Sabbath day. So the merchants and sellers of all kind of wares lodged outside of Jerusalem once or twice. Then I testified against them and said to them, Why do you lodge about the wall? If you do so again, I will lay hands on you. From that time forth they came no more on the Sabbath. I commanded the Levites that they should purify themselves, and that they should come and keep the gates, to sanctify the Sabbath day. Remember me, my God, also, and spare me according to the greatness of your loving kindness. In those days also I saw the Jews who had married women of Ashdod, of Ammon, and of Moab, and their children spoke half in the speech of Ashdod, and could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the language of each people. I contended with them and cursed them, and struck certain of them and plucked off their hair, and made them swear by God, saying, You shall not give your daughters to their sons, nor take their daughters for your sons or for yourselves. Did not Solomon king of Israel sin by these things? Yet among many nations was there no king like him, and he was beloved of his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, even him did foreign women cause to sin. Shall we then listen to you to do all this great evil, to trespass against our God in marrying foreign women? One of the sons of Joiada, the son of Eliashib the high priest, was son-in-law to Sanballat the Horonite. Therefore I chased him from me. Remember them, my God, because they have defiled the priesthood, and the covenant of the priesthood, and of the Levites. Thus I cleansed from them all foreigners, and appointed charges for the priests and for the Levites, every one in his work, and for the wood offering, at times appointed, and for the firstfruits. Remember me, my God, for good. The Book of Esther, Chapter 1. Now it happened in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus who reigned from India even to Ethiopia, over 127 provinces, that in those days, when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast to all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the province being before him, when he demonstrated the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days. When these days were fulfilled, the king made a feast to all the people who were present in Shushan the palace, both great and small, 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were hangings of white cloth, of green and of blue, fastened with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rings and pillars of marble. The couches were of gold and silver, on a pavement of red and white and yellow and black marble. They gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being different from one another, and royal wine in abundance, according to the bounty of the king. The drinking was according to the law. No one could compel, for so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house, that they should do according to every man's pleasure. Also Vashti the queen made a feast for the women in the royal house which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcas, the 7 chamberlains who ministered in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the royal crown, to show the peoples and the princes her beauty, for she was beautiful to look on. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by the chamberlains. Therefore was the king very angry, and his anger burned in him. Then the king said to the wise men who knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all who knew the law and judgment, and the next to him were Carshena, Shesar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who saw the king's face and sat first in the kingdom. What shall we do to the queen Vashti according to the law, because she has not done the bidding of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains? Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen has not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes, and to all the peoples who are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen will come abroad to all women, to make their husbands contemptible in their eyes, when it shall be reported. The king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she didn't come. This day will the princesses of Persia and Media, who have heard of the deed of the queen, say the like to all the king's princes. So there will arise much contempt and wrath. If it please the king, let there go forth a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate to another who is better than she. When the king's decree which he shall make shall be published throughout all his kingdom, for it is great, all the wives will give to their husbands honor, both to great and small. The saying pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan, for he sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing of it, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and should speak according to the language of his people. Chapter 2. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was pacified, he remembered Vashti, and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants who ministered to him, Let there be beautiful young virgins sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the beautiful young virgins to Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, to the custody of Haggai the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them, and let the maiden who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. The thing pleased the king, and he did so. There was a certain Jew in Shushan the palace, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives, who had been carried away with Jeconiah king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon had carried away. He brought up Hadassah, who is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maiden was fair and beautiful. And when her father and mother were dead, Mordecai took her for his own daughter. So it happened, when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together to Shushan the palace, to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was taken into the king's house, in the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. The maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for her purification with her portions, and the 7 maidens who were to be given her out of the king's house, and he removed her and her maidens to the best place of the house of the women. Esther had not made known her people nor her relatives, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not make it known. Mordecai walked every day before the court of the woman's house to know how Esther did and what would become of her. Now when the turn of every maiden was come to go in to King Ahasuerus, after it had been done to her as prescribed for the women 12 months, for so were the days of their purification accomplished, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with the things for the purifying of the women. Then in this way came the maiden to the king. Whatever she desired was given to her to go with her out of the house of the women to the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the next day she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Shashgaz the king's chamberlain, who kept the concubines. She came in to the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and she was called by name. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go into the king, she required nothing but what Haggai the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. Esther obtained favor in the sight of all those who looked at her. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his royal house, in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained favor and kindness in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown on her head, and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast to all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the provinces, and gave gifts according to the bounty of the king. When the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai was sitting in the king's gate. Esther had not yet made known her relatives nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her, for Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him. In those days, while Mordecai was sitting in the king's gate, 2 of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, of those who kept the threshold, were angry, and sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. The thing became known to Mordecai, who showed it to Esther the queen, and Esther told the king of it in Mordecai's name. When inquisition was made of the matter, and it was found to be so, they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. Be imitators of me, even as I also am of Christ. Now I praise you, brothers, that you remember me in all things, and hold firm the traditions, even as I delivered them to you. But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonors his head. But every woman praying or prophesying with her head unveiled dishonors her head. For it is one and the same thing as if she were shaved. For if a woman is not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it is shameful for a woman to be shorn or shaved, let her be covered. For a man indeed ought not to have his head covered, because he is the image and glory of God, but the woman is the glory of the man. For man is not from woman, but woman from man. For neither was man created for the woman, but woman for the man. For this cause the woman ought to have authority on her head, because of the angels. Nevertheless, neither is the woman independent of the man, nor the man independent of the woman in the Lord. For as woman came from man, so a man also comes through a woman, but all things are from God. Judge for yourselves. Is it appropriate that a woman pray to God unveiled? Doesn't even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it is a dishonor to him? But if a woman has long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given to her for a covering. But if any man seems to be contentious, we have no such custom, neither do God's assemblies. But in giving you this command, I don't praise you, that you come together not for the better, but for the worse. For first of all, when you come together in the assembly, I hear that divisions exist among you, and I partly believe it. For there must also be factions among you, that those who are approved may be revealed among you. When therefore you assemble yourselves together, it is not possible to eat the Lord's Supper. For in your eating each one takes his own supper before others. One is hungry, and another is drunken. What? Don't you have houses to eat and to drink in? Or do you despise God's assembly, and put them to shame who don't have? What shall I tell you? Shall I praise you? In this I don't praise you. For I received from the Lord that which also I delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night in which he was betrayed, took bread. When he had given thanks, he broke it and said, Take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you. Do this in memory of me. In the same way he also took the cup after supper, saying, This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this, as often as you drink, in memory of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. Therefore whoever eats this bread or drinks the Lord's cup in an unworthy manner will be guilty of the body and the blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For he who eats and drinks in an unworthy manner eats and drinks judgment to himself, if he doesn't discern the Lord's body. For this cause many among you are weak and sickly, and not a few sleep. For if we discerned ourselves, we wouldn't be judged. But when we are judged, we are punished by the Lord, that we may not be condemned with the world. Therefore, my brothers, when you come together to eat, wait one for another. But if anyone is hungry, let him eat at home, lest your coming together be for judgment. The rest I will set in order whenever I come. Psalm 35, by David. Contend, Yahweh, with those who contend with me. Fight against those who fight against me. Take hold of shield and buckler, and stand up for my help.
Brandish the spear and block those who pursue me. Tell my soul, I am your salvation. Let those who seek after my soul be put to shame and brought to dishonor. Let those who plot my ruin be turned back and confounded. Let them be as chaff before the wind, Yahweh's angel driving them on. Let their way be dark and slippery, Yahweh's angel pursuing them. For without cause they have hidden their net in a pit for me. Without cause they have dug a pit for my soul. Let destruction come on him unawares. Let his net that he has hidden catch himself. Let him fall into that destruction. My soul shall be joyful in Yahweh. It shall rejoice in his salvation. All my bones shall say, Yahweh, who is like you, who delivers the poor from him who is too strong for him, yes, the poor and the needy from him who robs him. Unrighteous witnesses rise up. They ask me about things that I don't know about. They reward me evil for good to the bereaving of my soul. But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I afflicted my soul with fasting. My prayer returned into my own bosom. I behaved myself as though it had been my friend or my brother. I bowed down mourning as one who mourns his mother. But in my adversity they rejoiced and gathered themselves together. The attackers gathered themselves together against me, and I didn't know it. They tore at me and didn't cease. Like the profane mockers in feast, they gnashed their teeth at me. Lord, how long will you look on? Rescue my soul from their destruction, my precious life from the lions. I will give you thanks in the great assembly. I will praise you among many people. Don't let those who are my enemies wrongfully rejoice over me, neither let them wink with the eye who hate me without a cause. For they don't speak peace, but they devise deceitful words against those who are quiet in the land. Yes, they opened their mouth wide against me. They said, Aha, aha, our eye has seen it. You have seen it, Yahweh. Don't keep silent. Lord, don't be far from me. Wake up, rise up to defend me, my God. My Lord, contend for me. Vindicate me, Yahweh, my God, according to your righteousness. Don't let them gloat over me. Don't let them say in their heart, Aha, that's the way we want it. Don't let them say, We have swallowed him up. Let them be put to shame and confounded together who rejoice at my calamity. Let them be clothed with shame and dishonor who magnify themselves against me. Let them shout for joy and be glad who favor my righteous cause. Yes, let them say continually, Yahweh be magnified, who has pleasure in the prosperity of his servant. My tongue shall talk about your righteousness and about your praise all day long.
He who loves pleasure shall be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil shall not be rich. The wicked is a ransom for the righteous, the treacherous for the upright. It is better to dwell in a desert land than with a contentious and fretful woman. There is precious treasure and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man swallows it up.